Hey, this video will be part 3 of a series of recreating Facebook and SvelteKit for the sake of learning. We're going to be getting posts, uploading photos, tagging people, and likes fully working today. And hopefully we'll finish up the rest next time. So on our profile page, we have our avatar and write something text box. We're going to need that in the newsfeed page as well. So since we need it in 2 places, let's make it into a component. So I'll copy this and put it in a new create post component. We need to import the user creating the post and the user the post it's going to. So let's call them user from and user to. Then below we can replace the references to data.user with user from and data.profile with user to. Let's also change the wording to newsfeed instead of profile. Now let's go back into the profile page and import this component and pass the users so we can see what we're doing in the preview. One thing we did forget to add so far is the visibility dropdown, whether it should be public or friends only, so let's work on that. On Facebook, it's a gray dropdown next to your avatar, so let's just add a select box with 2 options. And let's place it above the text box by containing both in a div. Then we can call it visibility like in the database and style it with Tailwind. Also in this component, when you click the Share Photo button, we'll allow the user to select multiple photos, and a preview of them will show up below the text box. So to make that work, we need an HTML file input element, but we'll make it hidden with opacity as we don't want the default look. We also want to allow multiple images, then we set some filters and give it a name. Now we need to have our hidden input sit in front of our button so that when you click on the button, you're really clicking on the file box. To do that, we can wrap both in a div and absolutely position the input box. And for now, let's remove the opacity and add a temporary style to make it red so we can see exactly where it is. Notice how the red completely covers the button. So let's rehide it with opacity again. The file pop-up works now when you click on it, but we lost our hover background color. To fix that, we can simply move the hover class from the button to the parent div. Also, we need to move the cursor pointer to the input. Now it looks like you're clicking on the Share Photo custom button to upload a file, when really it's the native HTML input element. When you pick photos using this, it'll start adding them below the text box, so let's make a flex div that will hold them if they exist. And before we load the images, I'm going to make some placeholders for them so we can get the style right. Here is what it would look like if we had 3 images. Now to make this work, we need to bind files to our input element. This is a new SvelteKit feature. Then up in our script, we defined files as a state rune. We also need another state variable that will be the array of temporary images. This will be strings as the value will be the CSS background image property. Then to do something when files change, we make an effect rune. Check if the files exist, and then loop through any images. In the loop, we add an event listener that'll add the image to the temp images array, and below the listener, a line to fire that off. Now in our image display area, we can loop through the temp images, move one of our placeholders in there, and set the style to be that CSS from the array. Then we can remove the other placeholders too. And there we go. If we go in and select a few images, they get shown below the text box. Now let's work on submitting and saving the post. To do that, we need to wrap all this in a form. The action will be special. We'll have a leading slash, which means it'll send it to the site's root server file. Since this component will be in the profile page and the root newsfeed, this will just send either of those to the root and we'll handle it there. Also, it needs method post, use enhance, and multi-part encoding. Now in our root page.server.ts file, we already have an update action because of our edit profile form. And that actually reminds me that we need to go into the nav bar and the form there and add a leading slash there as well for the same reason. There we go. Back in the scripts, let's add our post action. Then to select the update one, we get the inputs. the text and visibility. And I don't think we gave our post text area a name, so let's go do that. We can also copy the code that checks the logged in user was found. And next we can get images they sent. And since we allowed multiple images, this will be a get all function instead of get, and return an array instead of a single file. Now we can loop through them all and copy and paste the same code that does the extension check, the random name, the resizing, and the saving to the server. But we'll go back and increase the size to 1200 pixels. Now before we can save them to the database, the post record needs to exist first. So let's save the file names we've saved to a new array so we can use them later. The array will need to contain the path and the meme type, and the type is available in the file object under type. Now below our file loop, let's create the post. So we need a post object filled in. And here I actually realized we need to add a new column to this table. We have the user ID, which could be who posted it, but we also need who to post it to. So maybe a profile ID column as well. So I'm going to go add that to the database. And that means we also need to add that to our post server module and our generate object function. And we need to modify our getUserPost function to actually look at the profile ID and not the user ID. And same with the friends post a little further down. Then we add that column to the insert function and SQL as well. And we also don't need that leftover new password parameter that we copied from the users one. Back on the server file, we can set user ID to be the local's user ID. Created can stay blank. The database handles that. We also need to somehow know the profile ID. So back on our create post component, let's add a hidden input for the profile ID. That will be the user2 ID. And on the server file, grab it from the data. Now we can call our post module insert function, sending our new post, and check for an error and return that if so. Then we can save our uploaded files to the database now that we have the new post ID available. Just like in the post, we need a post attachment object filled in. And we just call our post attachment module we made in the beginning. Finally, at the end, we can just return success true. And now we should be able to submit a post. Just need to change the right post button to be a submit type instead. Now when you submit a new post, you'd probably want to see it right away on top of the feed. And also it looks like we need to clear the image previews because they're staying there. To do that, we need to customize the use enhance action back on the create post component. We can do that by specifying our own callback function like this. The await update will continue to do the default behavior use enhance already did for us, but now we can do something else after, like call a function called post added and a line to clear the temp image array. We're going to just pass the post added function back to the parent to also add post added to the props on top. And now back where we show the create post component, we need to define that function here. And we'll just call invalidate all when that gets triggered. Remember, we get our posts on this page from the page.server file, and if we want that data to load again, we call invalidate all. Now notice here we have a to-do for our post each block. That's because on the server file, we didn't really grab posts yet. So on that file, we just have a placeholder with a blank array. Let's actually get the posts now by calling our post module and the getUserPost function and send the ID of the profile. Back on the page, instead of the to-do, we can output the HTML we want for each post. In Facebook, they have the avatar, name, time frame, and icon for the visibility. The avatar will be our avatar component that just sends them to their profile page if you click on it. And then to show their name, we need to somehow get the name of the person inside the post array. Right now, we only have access to the user ID. What I would normally do for this is go into the interface and module for posts and add a full user object to it and make it optional with the question mark right after. And now when we generate the object, we grab the user object from the ID and add it to the post object. And because we're doing a database call here, we need to make this async now. And all the calls to generate object need to have a wait before it as well. Now we can read post.user.name back on there to get the name. And let's start aligning things as well with Tailwind. Before we go any further, let's separate this post output into a component as we're going to be using it in more than one place. We'll need to import a post object, and back on the page, just import the new component and send the post object to it. Below the name, we can show how long ago the post was posted. We'll say if it was less than an hour, we'll say the minutes. If it was over an hour, we'll say the hours. And if it was over a day, we'll say the days. To figure all that out, we should make a JavaScript function that does that. We're going to need that in more than one place. So let's make a function module file under lib commons folder. I'll call it dateformat.ts, and it'll contain an exported function, and in that function an API object that gets returned. And in the API object, a forPost function that'll do what we want. The function will take in either a date or a string, and first thing we need to do is convert it to a date if it's not. If it's a string and it happens to contain dashes, we need to replace them with slashes, otherwise the JavaScript date will get parsed incorrectly. Then we just parse the date string and turn it into a date object. And if it's not a string, then it's already a date object. Next, we get a variable for right now. Then we can get the difference between them, and this will be in milliseconds. Then we can get the days, minutes, and hours by just dividing each of them by how many milliseconds are in each. Then we'll do some if statements to return the formatted string as desired. So if it's been more than a day, return days, more than an hour, return hours. If minutes equals 0, we'll return now, and at the end we'll just return minutes. Now back on the post, we can output that by calling dateformat.forPost and send the created date. Then we can wrap it all as well in a div as we're going to put an icon next to it and then style it. Next to it, we'll make an if block to check if the visibility is public or not. If it is, we'll grab a globe icon from Tabler, and if it's not, we'll use a friends icon or a users icon. Below all that, we can show the post text, if any, and the post images. To get those, though, we need to do something similar to the user object in the post module. In here, we can add an attachments property in the interface. And in the generate object code, we can get the list of them and set it. And it looks like we're getting an error right now because we're trying to sort by created on the attachments table. So we just need to go in there and fix that. Now in the post component again, we can loop through post attachments. In there, the box that contains them will be similar to when creating a post. And the background image will have to come from a new route for streaming attachments, and we'll send the ID of it in the URL. Remember, earlier we created one for loading avatar images under photos/slug. We need to make an attachment/slug route now, and also steal the same server.ts file for the most part. Just need to rename user ID to attachment ID, get the attachment instead of the user, and we need a getSingle function for this as it doesn't have one already, so let's make that. Then we can go back and change the if statement and the read file sync path. And there we go. We have a large image below the post. We now need to allow our white box to keep going and scroll if needed though, because right now it's cut off. So on our layout, we need to remove any references that I set to max height. And also set the background image to fixed. Plus change the SVH height for it to minimum SVH so it can get bigger if needed. Finally, some margins below the white bubble. Now we can also dynamically set the basis the flex basis of the image depending on how many images we have. Right now it's full width, but we can set it to be 50% if they uploaded 2 images and 33% if they uploaded 3 or more. Since we're going to be dynamically changing it though, we can't use the tailwind class, so we'll do that in the style attribute with the multi-level shorthand if statement. And now if we write another post with 2 images, and then go back and wrap that all in a flex box so the basis works, it splits it into 2. Now let's add a thick gray border and some padding on top of each post. And below them, let's add our like counts and a like button. The button will have a thumb icon, of course, and be a little transparent. And next to the button, we'll have the blue thumb circle and a count. And I don't think we made a table or anything for tracking likes in the database, so let's do that. But for simplicity, let's just add a count column in the post table. And we also need to add that to our post module and interface as well. And let's add a simple function that will increase the likes by 1 and return the new count. Now when someone clicks on that button, we'll have it call a function called like. And that will call an API endpoint called API/post, and then the post ID, and then like. Since we're modifying a record, the method should be put for this one. And then we'll get the response. But in order to make likes reactive, since it's in an object, we first need to split it away from the post object. So on top, create a new state rune variable that will be from post.likes. And now we can set our JSON response to this likes variable. Now we can make this new folder in the API folder, make a slug folder under that for the post ID, and a like folder under slug. In here, we make a +server.ts file with a put function. We'll grab the slug, which is the post ID from the parameters, and we'll call our new like function that we made, and just return back the count. Now let's go back to the post page and add the HTML for the blue like icon circle and the count next to it. And let's try it out. Now it lets you do it more than once, which shouldn't be allowed, of course, but that would be fixed by creating a likes table and tracking who liked it. And if you happen to already like it, gray out the button or hide it. But we're not going to go into that much detail for this project. Let's try logging in and posting as someone else a few times and setting it to friends instead of public so we can test that feature later. Now let's load all our posts and friends posts into the main homepage feed. Just like in the profile, we'll load the posts initially in the root page.server.ts file, but we'll call the getFriends post function instead. And below that, let's also get our posts and then combine them into a single post variable like this. And then we can sort them by date with the native sort function. And then we send it back along with the user. Now on the newsfeed page, we can do the same loop we did in the profile. And while we're in here, we can also take the create post component too. Then we do some imports, change the to user to also just be the logged in user. And there we go. The posts and the ability to post are on this page as well. And since the like functions are contained in the post component, it works too with no other changes needed. Let's have my friend Mark post on my wall, and we'll see what that looks like. That post we did now isn't really clear. It was on my feed, so we'll probably need to also pull in the profile user's info too in the post screen. So let's do that. It's going to be very similar to how we got the user's info. In our post component, if the user ID and the profile ID are different, we'll change up the wording and move around some of the containing boxes. And that looks better now. Now finally, I think the last thing there is to do for this video is the ability to tag people. So up next to the visibility dropdown in our create post component, let's add a search box for finding and tagging people. We'll want a search icon floating over it, so we'll put it all in a div. And we can grab the icon from our navbar component or from Tabler. The input will look similar in size to the dropdown, and we'll have a placeholder of tag friends. When someone starts typing, it'll show their friends list. So let's track when they type by binding the value to the new state variable. And since their friends list won't change in between this component loading and unloading, let's only load their friends in once on mount. So on the onMount, we'll call a load friends function. Before we make this function, let's have a state variable that will hold the response. We need one for the list we'll display and one for all the friends, as the displayed one might be trimmed or filtered out. Then in the function, just call an API endpoint called /API friends and set the response to our two friends variables. We already have the friend folder in the API folder for other reasons. So let's just open up that existing file. We'll add a simple get function. And in here, just get the list of friends. Now on the create post component, we'll always have a list of friends ready to go in the background. To show the friends, we can toggle a boolean as soon as they click on the search box. So let's make a searching state variable. And we'll set the onClick for the input to set that to be true. Also, when someone starts typing in our search, let's filter the list. To do that, we can use the existing effects rune and run a native filter function if there's any words typed in. Then down above the text box for the post, show a results box if the searching boolean is true. Then a heading and a message and a button to close and cancel out of this if we want. We can take that button from our profile page. We just need to change the onClick function. Now above the cancel button, let's loop through the friends that we have and display them just like we do in the search panel. We just need to change these from A tags to buttons and set the onClick of each to somehow add them as a tagged person. For that, I'll create a state run array on top to hold anyone we tagged. And when you click on one, it'll add them to the array. Now, a cool thing we can do to not show this user in the list once they've been tagged is to just wrap it in an if statement and check to see if it's not in the tag list array. And also let's show the tag list as a bunch of bubbles that look similar to the visibility dropdown. This can go right above the searching statement. Now that we can add people to be tagged, we need to get it over to the form submission somehow. So we can just make another hidden input that will be a JSON string of the friends, but just the IDs from there. Now in our server script, we'll grab that value and convert it from a JSON. This will be an array of just IDs. And now below, after we make the post, we can loop through them and save it to the post tagged table. And now let's make a post with tagged friends and try it out. We'll need to modify the output to show we're with people. To get access to that though, we again need to add it to our post interface and module. And an easier way to get this here is to make a new function called getTagged. And there we go. This should get the users tagged for a given post. And now our generate object addition should work. And also we can now loop through anyone tagged in the post component and show them. We can add this I in here to get the index and only show a comma separating the names and an and if we aren't at the end. And I think that's about it for this one for now. We'll finish up next time with working on notifications and the public friends permission system. If you have any questions about this, please just let me know, and thanks for watching.